Welcome to the Generative Executive Officer. Why can't I hear the music? Hmm? I was just playing the music. Did I not play it? Let's try it again. There we go. Welcome to the Generative Executive Officer. I'll get this intro down. But I want to tell you what this show's about. It's really a deep dive into how generative AI is impacting the whole world. And I've been in AI for 14 years, and I've been focused on generative AI for the past 2. I've used AI to automate everything I know how to do. I've been in software 30 years, give or take. Depends on how you count it. I've worked with over 40 CEOs and a whole bunch of companies, and I've automated myself out of a generative. Last year I spoke to hundreds of people about generative AI, and particularly a lot of CEOs, and many of them were like, can you create an AI of me? And I said, absolutely. There's no question I can create an AI of you. So these are the kind of things we're going to talk about on this show. My goal is to put one out every day and one every night. And I'm going to be using Grok as my co-host. So this is what the show's all about. And just to recap, I got interested in business when I was a kid. I did all this stuff here. Constantly having a side hustle, constantly working for big leaders in software, companies like WebMD, Siebel, Pivotal. They were all unicorns. So are these others sold. And I wrote this book after working with generative AI for a year at 8base, and then this show in 2024. So now I'm coming back with a book called The Generative Executive Officer, where I'm actually going to show you how to build yourself as an AI, which isn't as hard as it sounds. Certainly 2 years ago, that was more of a challenge. Last year, still not terribly easy. Now, especially with Grok, it's amazing what you can do. So I'm going to build this book here from scratch. And I have all the pieces. Why isn't this working? I have all the pieces. I have the pieces from this book, from this life, from this show, and a bunch of other stuff. And I'm going to load it into AI to create the book from scratch, but it's also going to be, once you load it in as a book, you can ask it anything you want. And this is really the challenge today with CEOs and executive teams. Pardon me, I'm going to turn this down just a second. Let's see how it goes. There we go. About right there. All right. So here's what we're going to talk about today. The show's all about AI leadership and humanity. And so we're going to focus in first on, today's topic is how the executive team, exec team / C-suite is going. Go, Nick. Let's fix that. Going to change. That's today's theme. All right. And again, as a kid, I had a family of entrepreneurs that I grew up in. I was always fascinated with CEOs. I was reading books about CEOs and articles and all this stuff when I was pretty little, like 14. In 2010, I went through this really, really hard time, and I started studying like dark time. And I started studying neuropsychology to get out of this darkness. And I'm starting a charity around using AI for mental health. More information coming soon. But besides talking about Gen AI here, we're going to talk about leadership, and I'm going to draw on my neuropsychology background now, which is 15 years of deep study, practice with dozens of people talking about just psychology and personal support for them, as well as working with some kids 18 to 25 or so about how they figure out where their career goes and where their life goes and all that stuff. And that also moves us into the last part of the show, which is about humanity. So that's what we're going to be doing in this show, and I'm going to get started with some background information here. Okay, so what is a generative executive officer? All right, you can go read this on my website, but also if you want to get to my LinkedIn, my YouTube channel, you can download the free book, which I'm going to point out. I'm going to draw some things from. The training is the first show I did, and of course you can sign up for newsletter. I also wrote a book called The Grateful Organization. All my socials are here and whatnot. So here, let me pause this. Here is the homepage of my YouTube. Let's see, I'm going to turn off this music for a second. Just click pause. And you can see I've just started doing live streams. I love this one with Elon. And this was the training. So I'm going to point out some different things about the training just to give you a taste. You should be able to hear this. I got a fancy intro. Well, what's important here is that I took a year to work in generative AI to write this book. And then I took another year to create a new book, or have launched creating a new book using AI 100%. Right, but this was last year. And you get the idea. So my point in this is that it's changing everyone. And the whole red pill, blue pill theme, as you can see in their hands here, is because once you realize what generative AI can do, you have a red pill, blue pill, red pill experience. You can see all the diagrams I made, with all the imageries I worked with Dolly on. You can get an idea of the show.
What I was talking about was
I want to move. This is my partner
for
time. I want to move to a certain
version doing this, right? I can write something in English
because
this
for this
diagram.
Show, there we go.
Talk about
how. So in this show, the main topic is really going to be what's going on in the executive team, and I'll explain it here in this show and in the book. But for the generative executive officer, it's important, if you haven't realized it yet, that you probably, unless you're like the head of a hyperscaler or a generative AI company, or maybe you've already invested deeply for a year or two, very, very early adopter. But even if you've done that, I don't think it's obvious. And I'm going to show you just how profound this change is for a CEO. I found out very quickly in the first week of using generative AI, somewhere around December of 2022. Wait, yeah, because that I could automate myself completely, and I have. I've automated. I've done commercialization of software, high tech, forward-thinking companies, industry leaders, unicorns, etc., for a long time. And I've played, unlike some people that just stay in one thing their whole life, like they've been in sales their whole life. I've been in sales, marketing, consulting, customer experience, CRM, AI, I'm mixing up some industries and some roles here, but I'm very, very wide. And so I've tried to do every activity that I've learned how to do in my life and do it with AI. And that includes starting companies and leading change for big programs, reporting into the CEO on multiple occasions. And there is nothing that AI cannot do. It can do things much faster than me. It can now, you have to know how to interact with it, okay, to get quality. But it makes me, I used to say, well, it's 3 times better because I didn't want people to worry about, oh, it can't be 10 times better. And then when I was 10 times better with it, like 10 times faster, 10 times more effective, basically one person doing the work of 10, like people couldn't believe it. However, I can now demo and will demo today how people can get it to be 100 times faster. Right. So in the first uh, uh, episode, the non-pilot episode, this diagram sets up what the book was about. And all these bots here, um, this is conceptual. But at this point, not only do you have prompts, like constantly people are posting on X, right? Let's see, prompts. Prompts, Grok. You'll just see a massive, massive, massive amount of people saying, here's how you do it, here's how you do it. And it's just a flood. It used to be um, less common to find all these prompts, but now the prompts are everywhere. So how do you get them organized, right? How do you take advantage of them? And how do you construct an organization, especially on the go-to-market side, on the commercialization side, where you have these sales, marketing and product teams that have to orchestrate a bunch of bots. And so if we move along here, let's see, there's always gratitude. I'm always grateful, dedicated to my daughter. But I want to get into this first episode real quick because this is where we introduce what a generative executive officer is. And this is now probably about 9 months old. So let me play a minute of it. And then we'll talk more.
Stuff and a lot of different graphics. But in episode 1, we're going to cover chapter 1. We're going to go through some whiteboards and we're going to give a ChatGPT demo. All right. And this is a new, it's really a feature. And Tom, this will probably be a surprise to you. But this feature is one, oh, and I got a fancy animation, but I'm not going to put it on right now. I'm calling it, it should be the CEO perspective, and these are just filters I'm adding to the same image, right? But well, maybe we change this to CEO point of view, but I think it is the generative executive officer might be what's coming. And so the idea here is that we're going to, diagram something real quick and talk about it purely from the CEO perspective, because we also go down into the weeds from the top of the org chart to the bottom. And I just wanted to point out one thing, and then Tom, we can flip over to your whiteboard if you have some thoughts. But
you get the
knowledge
idea.
base comes from many different areas,
and we explain
people are scared about this change, and so it's going to take, in the back office, it's going to take AdamBloom.me.
Right. So now you get the point of that. And I'm not trying to scare anyone. Everyone needs to pay attention. Whether you're a CEO, a CIO, a CFO, a CRO, a CMO, any CXO, generative AI, right? It's calling your name. And if I go over to the book and I introduce some of these chapters again, let's see, here we go. Yes, the generative sales and marketing organization. I'm going to make this point again, and the show is free, and the book is free download at my website, but of course dedicated to my daughter. Let me just get to that point. Okay, so here's what's up. This diagram is from Adrian Sawatsky, 1995. It was, I think, a Harvard Business Review, very popular. And what it explains, excuse me, what it explains, and I'm going to do a copy here so that I can move it over here and I can actually draw on it. So there we go. All right. So what this explains is this. This is market value and company revenue. I actually want to use a different color here. Okay. So this represents market value and company revenue. And when we just get started, any product, value flows in, then you get stability. This is when you get profitability. And then over time, value flows out. And this changes anytime customer needs shift. Okay. And so generative AI is forcing this to change fast. Right. So fast, it's a compressed timeline, but also because it's generative AI, it is impacting everything. Right. So if you're a CEO or a CMO or a CRO and you look out at your organization, you're going to have to figure out, how does all this change? And if you're an employee or if you're an influencer, you're going to want to learn how to maximize your ability with generative AI. And I, if you're holding on to that and wondering, I'll show you in a minute. This is just not something to hold on to anymore. So how do we think about it going forward, right? Let's look at the next slide. So da, 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 da. So if you think about this example over here, you had somebody on the floor of the shop. Maybe they made a screw. Here's a screw. Boop. Maybe you made a hole. Maybe you bent metal somehow, right? And that was the line. And now we look at Tesla and it's all robots. Okay. But if you put that in terms of the white collar world, you might have to have taken a sales or marketing document and turned it into something else and then gave it over to three people and they had to do this and this and this with it. And then that went to other people. Right. But over here, you're going to have a bot, hand it to a bot and execute like that. And you're not going to have to touch it as much. It's going to be way more automated. So I just move this. I don't want to move that. So if I go to the next slide, okay, here's the next slide. Let's see. So the bottom line, and again, if you're a small business owner, and people used to doubt me on this, but after talking to so many executives in 2024, it really comes down to this right here. Okay. And yeah, in particular, this right here. And people didn't believe me. And now it's happened. All right. So this is the model. This is what's happening at companies. If you're an employee or a middle manager or an executive, this is what's happening. It's been proven at this point. There's no way around it. And so what do? Well, we're going to have to, as managers, deal with this. Okay. So if you're in management or even if you're an executive today, you're going to have to become a generative executive officer. And that's whether you're a CEO or a CIO, CMO, whatever. Okay. You're going to have to become a generative executive officer in every way, shape, and form. And particularly if you are the CEO, right? So these executives have to come over here and become Gen AI executives. And management has to become Gen AI management. And frontline has to become Gen AI frontline, right? And you'll see people tell you in the market all the time, oh, it's going to augment us. Yes, it is. But when something augments you so well, let me adjust this. Can I get it better this way? Nope. Nope. Yeah, that'll work. So when you augment a human so well, there's a part of the human that just becomes more productive, right? So if you have someone salaried employee and they become 5 times more productive, then you need 5 less people or 4 less people. And anyone that tells you otherwise is lying to your face. There is just no way around this. I've automated myself out of a job. I've talked and worked with tons of companies about this. I've written thousands of detailed prompts at this point. My longest prompt is 15 pages. Um, I've studied tons and tons of vendors. I've been in the industry in AI for 14 years, and the past 2 years in generative AI. This is what's going to happen. And this is what the book talks about, and the first show talks about. So, with that said, I'm going to scoot over here. This is YouTube. I want to go back to, oh, nope, dismiss this. Please, I don't want you to show up anymore. Out of dial action area. I'm not sure what that is. My computer died yesterday, so I've got a new one. I'm figuring it out. In any event, so with that said, let's look at what's happening. Whoop. First of all, we talked about the Twitter. I showed you ah I showed you all the prompts that you could find on Twitter. Yes, and of course, this is the day that Trump's going to speak tonight. And I'll tell you, I'm pretty politically uh, balanced in my knowledge and understanding, but I'm for change. And what's happening with the government and when Elon Musk with AI, it is just, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. In fact, I'm going to point out a couple of things that are going on here. Um, but I wanted to look at the news. So yes, Musk, blah 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 blah. Where is my AI? There we go. Here we go. Generative AI. So every day. I'm not a big fan of this one. People are out there just making tons of imagery, but that's not what I'm looking for. I think I'm looking for this one. Da 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 da. Hmm. Yeah, AI isn't optional in marketing anymore. Yeah, I mean, kids are doing better at automating marketing as influencers than big companies. That's a big point I want to make here. So I've talked to I spent a lot of time in social media, and I've talked to a lot of people who are wannabe influencers or even influencers. And this is common. How do I grow my social media using AI? What are you working on today? Let's see. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And obviously, um, you know, Twitter's kind of a hyper sharing kind of network. But let's go further. I want to pick apart some of what McKinsey is saying about generative AI. And this is quite dated now. I had already, when they wrote this article, I had already written my book and I had already done my show. So I was very curious. I've competed with McKinsey one-on-one with consulting, and they've got a great brand, but they've had their challenges too. So yes, of course, at record speed, we are still learning. So that's crap. I call them out on that right away. For them to say, oh, well, CEOs are still learning. Okay, hang on. Here we offer the essentials. Okay, my bad. I overstepped a little bit. CEOs are still learning. I thought it's something else to begin with. But let's see. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, this is a big deal. It does democratize AI. And I want to use an example of this. All right. I used to say with one of my business partners that you have a endless number of what do you call it when you hire a college age person in the summer? Oh, intern. So you have an unlimited number of interns, but in reality, you have an unlimited number of experts. So if you're a CEO, the mindset is by using, and Grok is not my favorite, but I've tried them all and we'll go through a lot of them. Um, you have an endless number of experts at your beck and call as a CEO. Not only that, you can make a digital twin of your CMO and ask it questions before you meet with your CMO. And you could actually do that for everyone on your executive team and ask AI to predict what they would say to any given idea that you have. So while this is reaching, 100 million users and they're talking about the democratization of these things, as well as CEOs are still learning, I'm just jumping in because this thing's almost 2 years old. And I'm telling you, I've been doing this for 2 years. And the people that are really in it, and move the companies that are on the edge, they've been doing this for a while. So let's just see what else this is. If they should act now, CEOs want to know if they should act now. Yeah, yeah, act now. Where to start? This is what this show's about. And yeah, they give they always do a great job. It's a great article. I don't think they get everything right. Let's just see. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Anyway, you get the point. Also, you can see things like this more recently, and I've been using Bing and Copilot for quite some time, but I hadn't seen this prompt gallery, and you can now choose from a bunch of prompts. But here's the deal: this kind of prompt, draft a reply to Rachel, blah blah blah. This is a very short prompt. What I'm going to start to teach you is prompts that are 10 times longer or 50 times longer, because as a CEO, you can get a lot more. Even the CEO of your life, you can get a lot more information out of it if this is helping you with minor tasks. Yeah, it's very helpful. But when you do something big, that's when it's a game changer. And this is how I can automate myself so much. If I go back to the PowerPoint, let's see, and I show you another example. Let's see. Here's an example. So whether you're in sales or marketing, you used to do a process like this, and you would get your 10 people, 10 units of output, 10 units of time. And now what I'm showing you is an employee can do all this just on their own. And if you assume this is a CEO or a middle manager or frontline worker, it's all accessible to them. Everyone can get it. And you can move this much faster. And I know how to move this much faster. And people don't know what to do with it. I've gone into so many discussions with executives, and I'm like, I can go 10 times faster or get 10 times more done for you in any given period. And they kind of look at you crazy. They're like, there's no way. And then I sit down and I do a demo, usually for a CEO, and I create a tiny nano language model. Basically, I take information about their company and themselves, and I can build an entire business plan, a really, really exceptionally good one, because I've done dozens and dozens of them. Um, and just it's so fast. It's so incredibly fast. So again, this is what we're talking about with Deloitte. You know, This was when did this come out? It doesn't say. I don't like when they do that. They should always put when it's from. In any event, yeah, accelerating innovation. You know, that makes sense. I don't know what the 80% are doing, and I don't know the exact context of the question, but accelerating innovation is one way to put it. Digital transformation is another way to put it. But what I'm saying, having worked in all aspects of business across industries, all aspects of the go-to-market side, the front office, um, this isn't just accelerating innovation. This is like you're reinventing. You are actually a phoenix. What this is going to do is it's quickly going to, if you don't do it, it's going, your competitors will. So generative AI in some ways is going to be ashes from the phoenix. It's going to destroy and dismantle a large part of your organization and rebuild it as generative AI first. And a lot of people are fighting that. A lot of people are like, no, I don't think it's going to work that way. Well, let me explain real quick. Because if you're, let's see, so if you have this organization here and you've got all these people, right? And it goes on down, you got all the people here. And then somewhere in this soup of people, you also have process and technology. Okay. And there's also things like policy and money, and there's other ways to model this. But basically, what happens is first, these things are all connected, right? People use technology to do processes, right? But this, it's already easily, you should be able to get 3 times more productivity, if not more. Okay. But that also means the process is going to change. And that means the technology is going to change. So if something can go from 1 unit of productivity to 3 across all these areas, that's a massive change. We've never ever, no CEO on earth, except for the ones that are already building it when they're AI providers, that's a different story. But everyone else has to look at their organization and go, holy cow, what happens when the people in my organization are 3 times more productive? What happens when they're 5 times? What happens when they're 10 times? And that is a head explosion. You almost can't even, like, you're used to sitting in rooms and meetings and seeing people or on, the video chats or whatever. Um, and it gives you this sense. And here's where the psychology comes in. You're so used to seeing the way business works today that you almost can't see it until you are either in a dojo or you're really deep in it. You watch some video, you're listening to someone like me, what have you. But it's very hard to imagine when one person can do the work of 100. And that's what's happening. So let's look at a couple of the latest news pieces here, just to make sure we stay super relevant here. So yeah, this is for sure happening. We talked about Copilot, we did that. I'm gonna come back here. So I did a couple of queries here. Generative executive officer on Google. Nice to know I'm number one here. Then you got McKinsey. I'm gonna get up there. I'm again on images. Hmm. In any event, you can see, Google answered it, the CEO's guide to building generative AI. Now, I've written documents like this, white papers, for a large part of my life, so it'll have the brand on there for Deloitte or whoever, but I've done it for the best companies in the business. Mm, Excuse me, I don't have any sponsors yet, but I do love that stuff. And you can see, Set a vision, articulate how generative AI can improve human productivity and skills. Invest wisely. All right, let's see what's under this. That one's from Deloitte, IBM, Deloitte. I took a look at that Deloitte one. Broadhurst. That one seems old, but none of these are terribly surprising. What is surprising is that the impact of your decision here is an order of magnitude greater. All right, so let me explain that. If you're, let's see if I can go to another page here. So if you're an executive, all right, and this is where, neuropsychology comes in. Um, at the end of the day, you're getting paid to make important decisions about people, process, technology, resources. You're making those decisions on a daily basis to impact some metric. All right. And most people that are making these decisions are what I would call an operational mindset. An operational mindset means you want incremental improvement. You don't want to take on nothing too big, nothing too risky. You just want to make basic improvements. All right. And while I can do that, I'm more of a change agent. And so for the people making these operational decisions, you are going to be neuropsychology wise, you are going to have significant cognitive bias. And it just doesn't matter if you're a CEO or not. Whoop. Keep hitting the wrong thing. Boop. There we go. You're going to have significant cognitive bias. And so what that means is you're looking at something this way. This is what you know. If unless you constantly lead big change, big projects, and I mean things that are like we're going to put in here's a way to put it. If you're putting in a new CRM, um, and you lead a lot of that, which I've done, that's not what I'm talking about. You may lead a lot of change at a company, but if it's a traditional application, this is totally different. In generative AI, the way you implement and manage the software, those types of tools is completely different than the traditional way of software. Now there's some overlap, but you can't even compare it. Most people are out there going, "Oh, well, I've done a lot of decision making. They tend to be good at this stuff and not major change. Major change would be spinning off a new venture. Major change would be making more than one plus acquisitions. Right? This is a lot of change. Um, but in this generative AI space, you're just not going to recognize it. What happens if you've got a sales team of 100 people or a marketing team of 30 people, or let's say it's 1,300? What happens when you can get 10x productivity, so you only need 10 or 3? 30. Wait, what? Wait. 10 times 30 is 300. 10. Yeah, there we go. So you got to step back and go, okay, I used to have an org chart of 100 people, and now I'm going to have an org chart of 10 people. How do you contemplate that? I used to have an org chart of 100 people, and now I'm going to have an org chart that's much different. So that's where the cognitive bias comes in. People are saying, "Oh, it's augmentative and you know, we'll stepwise into the change." So many people last year were like, "Oh, we're getting our arms around it." And so if you're making decisions for this operational incremental improvement, you're going to miss it. This is not an operational incremental improvement. This is a massive overhaul of humanity. And so, as a leader, whether you're, you got your own podcast and you're a streamer or a YouTuber or an influencer, or the CEO of a much, much bigger company, $1 billion company or even more, um, you do have these responsibilities, but the sheer volume of people change and the related processes, it is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life to lead this transformation. It really is, and a lot of it has to do with the human part, right? So you can see here, like, this was from today. Amazon CEO says he's cutting middle managers, right? So when people come out and say things like this, um, it makes middle managers nervous. He's also come right out and said, what else has Jassy said about? Let's see, Jassy. Um, where is he? Andy Jassy. Andy generative AI. He put something out the other day, and I'm using Bing and Google. Oh wow, he just he put out this. I want to find something newer. They got something. Da, 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 da. Oh yeah, they're gonna put it on Alexa, and that's what it was. So again, it's surrounding us, but it's going to be really, really interesting once. Let me close this. It's going to be really, really interesting once I mean, it's already on our phones, but I think within the next year, it's going to be so embedded and ubiquitous everywhere, like when it's in Alexa and it's on our phones and it's on our computers, and um, you begin to treat it like it's a part of you. Like at this point, I'll sit down and have a conversation with Croc. In fact, let's do that right now. Let's see what I can say to Grok. All right. And feedback here on the show is very appreciated. I am pulling it together. You gotta record them and critique yourself, and record them and critique yourself till you get it just the way you want it. All right, so I'm on X. Let's go to Grok. And you saw Elon do this the other day. And while we're on Elon, I'm just gonna say one thing. Anyone that's out there complaining about Elon, seriously, go read the guy's history. Go read and watch interviews from the past 20 years about what this guy's all about. And if you think he's a bad person or he's trying to cause problems or anything really negative, yeah, this is going to be a tough change in the United States right now and around the world. I mean, between the crap going on in our government, which mm, I don't know if I want to go there. Yeah, I'll go there real quick. Basically, in the United States, like many other countries, you pay roughly 25 to 33% of taxes. Okay. So that's a quarter to a third of your income is taxes. Now, if you look at that in terms of how much time you spend over a year, that's 3 to 4 months. Every US citizen, pretty much, the grand majority, basically works for 3 to 4 months of every year to give the government its tax money. And then the rest of the money you make that year is yours. Does that make sense? If you're making 100K, either 25 or 33K go into taxes. So if you just look at it as monthly income, the first 3 to 4 months of income you make go to the government, then you get the rest. I hope that makes sense. And Elon on Rogan the other night, I mean, you could just if you've studied the guy, like I've studied so many CEOs, Elon's the man, right? A lot of people have. A lot of people believe that. But if you look at what he said, he literally is like, very simple. I had no idea how bad it was. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, gosh, if 3 to 4 months of every year, let's just say it's 20 years, 3 to 4 months of every year for the past 20 years, it's longer. Um, That's going to the government. All right. And then let's say half of that is being wasted. And I'm uh, it may be the case that half. That means out of the past 20 years for 2 months every year. So that's 40 months of my life. I worked for giving the government taxes and somebody either using it super foolishly or that's almost 8 years. Like I spent 8 years of my life giving the government money, 8 full years, and somebody's wasting it or fraud and stealing it. I can't tell you how many people I know who are super frustrated about this. In any event, getting off track a little bit, let's go to Grok here. So let's see. Hey, Grok. So tell me what a generative executive officer does.
There. A generative executive officer, or GEO, is a pretty cool role. It's someone who focuses on sparking creativity and innovation in a company. They're all about generating new ideas, strategies, and solutions to help the business grow and adapt. Think of them as a visionary leader who inspires the team to think outside the box and push things forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but that's kind of a generic example. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to act like three different roles. One, I want you to be the CMO. Two, I want you to be the CRO. And three, I want you to be the CIO. And I want you to give an in-depth perspective in as few words as possible about the most critical thing happening in their domain and in their department in the past 2 months.
All right, let's dive in. First, as a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, I'd say the most critical thing in the past 2 months has been the shift in consumer behavior after that big social media algorithm update. It's thrown our ad targeting off, so we've had to pivot fast. Doubling down on authentic influencer partnerships to keep brand trust high and engagement steady. Now, revenue officer role, the focus has been on optimizing our sales funnels. We noticed a drop
So
off in
you get the idea, right? I went from a very simple request that gave me a generic answer like this to a lot more detail, right? And that's what we're going to cover. So, again, I like that I'm up here. That's awesome. Amazing. I am in fact the first one to trademark generative executive officer. More to come, more to come. IBM, Coursera. All right, we'll keep going. In any event, so another area to just keep in mind, and I'm building a case for whether you're an individual person, a CEO, I've got to call them back. Um, you're the CEO of your life. Maybe it's a small business, maybe it's a website, e-commerce site, what have you. But I wanted to look up economic development with generative AI. And I just need to make this comparison because the US has and my audience is it's worldwide, but I live in the US. I have partners all over the world, probably friends in 40 different countries, worked in so many different countries. Um, but the United States is the home of the software industry. And right now, we are by far, like, let me look it up real quick. Um, Diagram, worldwide data centers. Let's see what happens here. What does this say? Nope. Oh, maybe this is an example. Yep, here we go. So the hyperscale data centers, 44%. All right. The next is China at 8%, and then Germany at 5%. So we are 5 times bigger, 9 times bigger than the closest one in terms of data centers. And you see Trump doing all this stuff to double down. We're going to continue to be that leader. And so when we look at the past, couple of decades about how things got outsourced overseas, I wanted to look at generative AI and economic development, and particularly I was going to use Malaysia as an example, and I can't remember if it was Malaysia or another country, but at some point early on, one of the top government leaders came online and said they did a press release, and it was basically, we are going to pay for every citizen in our country to get generative AI training. And you have to sit back and ask yourself, why? Why are they doing that? And the answer was because if we don't do it, we're going to be stuck as a third world country for the rest of history, right? So um, you see all over the world, right? Here, young employees are leading it, and that's for sure. Here's Microsoft last year putting 2 billion into Malaysia, right? And I was trying to see what else might come up there, but every country, every country is doing this. And so I found this economic impact of Gen AI, and this was September 2023. So they saw it coming before ChatGPT and Sam Altman and OpenAI really. Actually, I take that back. Sorry, that was December 22nd. I misspoke. This is almost a year later. They did not see it early. That's my fault. Maybe there's an earlier one, but this is not considered early. And it was done again. Microsoft, I've worked on these kind of white papers before. Um, but they're putting money into Malaysia. They're teaching Malaysia. Like, if you're in the United States and you're not learning this stuff on your job, you are very behind on a global market at this point. You are competing globally, and you are going to be behind if you're not behind already, right? So, as a CEO, your workforce is getting this kind of information from all the vendors, right? If you're going to stand up in front of your workforce and say it's not going to happen that fast, or it's not going to impact your career, any of that, they're going to know that you are lying through your teeth, right? You can see with the United States, this was earlier in the same time, but we've got a generative AI task force in the DoD. And I will tell you, I talked to somebody uh, who works for the Air Force the other day, the United States Air Force, and they did recruiting and placement. And I've done work in the recruiting industry, the staffing industry, um, software in that area. And it's just, I mean, I keep saying it's just nuts. But in this case, this part of our government military was already using AI for recruiting and placement. So I was asking her some questions, and she's like, "Yeah, we'll get hundreds of resumes, and AI will pick out the top 3 for me, and then I'll sit down with those." So for those of you that are in the world of LinkedIn submitting resumes and scratching your head, I just keep wondering how long it is until LinkedIn says, and they may have the feature already, until they just say, "Give me your ideal candidate," and it just culls through everything. Because right now you submit a job, there's 600 people that are also submitting the same job, and it is not working well. It's not working well for anyone that I've heard. I think it's working well. Um, yeah, I just haven't heard anyone saying, "Yeah, LinkedIn's working great right now for career stuff." There's no one saying that. In any event, you can see here last year around this time, um, and acquiring Udacity for training. All right, not sure how that's going, but this is what's been going on. If you haven't watched over the past couple of years, this one is from 2 months ago, so February, no, the end of last year, beginning of this year. So here, Saudi Arabia, NVIDIA, Generative AI Academy, like, this is changing the world, and you have to get with it. If you're a CEO and you don't realize, I mean, I know you know this, but what I'm trying to portray is way more is happening than you can possibly imagine unless you're really tracking it. Um, this is going to hit people like a pound of bricks, right? So it's worldwide. It's happening at all levels of the government. It's happening at all levels of organization. It is the fastest change in history, and it is going to get rid of a ton of jobs. How, as a CEO, do you deal with this? And in particular, and the reason I have the words humanity and leadership as part of this podcast is because it's going to come down to that. When you're dealing with this much change, it's going to take vulnerability, it's going to take real leadership and caring about people. People are already getting replaced. I replaced myself with AI. One of the examples I use sometimes, well, I'll come to Klarna in a second, but here's a new one just came out. We need a skills-based approach in Southeast Asia. So again, this theme, it's in every region. Let's see, what is this one? Two new university corporate AI partnerships. That was a year ago. So this is happening and happening and happening and happening. Okay, here's training for educators. It's everywhere. All right. So if you're a CEO and or a CMO or a CRO, and if you haven't already replaced 10 people with one AI, you're way behind. I hate to say that. It's hard to find a gig right now. It's been a struggle to find work. In some cases, I do a lot of consulting work. Last year was the craziest year I've ever seen. Um, there's still a lot of government education that is way behind. They're just way behind. Unless you've already figured out how to automate yourself out of a job, I would say your skills are not there yet. Now think about that as a CEO or as a leader of your own life. What happens when you have 10 times the productivity? What does that even look like? How do you manage that? You're no longer managing a group with 50 people in it. You're managing a group that does 10 times more, but there's 5 people in it. Like, this is a different mentality of leadership. You have to have extreme technical acumen, and you better have great relationships with these employees. And not only that, I pray to God that you act as a good human during this transition, because this is changing humanity at the grandest scale we could ever imagine. All right. So now, with that said, been talking for about an hour. I want to shut this down soon, but look, this is for anyone that hasn't seen it. This is Runway. So Runway, you can create all different kinds of come on, image. You can, ask it to create all different kinds of images and videos. And let's see if this is the one that moves. No, but I did ask this to be edited. Where is that? Da, 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 da. Oh, I have this one on the bottom of my website down here. So on my website, there's a show. I actually, there's the book. I actually put a bot out about a year ago, and this is it. And I haven't changed it. It's based on ChatGPT. I have a more advanced version in ChatGPT. I'll show you in a second. But if you come in here and you say, "Hi, I'm a CEO," and I'll give you information about me and my business problem. So I'm going to say, I am the CEO of, let's see, a big shoe company who competes with Nike. And then you type that in. It might not, it's not perfect. And this little app is limited, but I'll show you what happens. And then I'll show you what happens when I have the more even advanced version in ChatGPT. Right. But what it's already capable of doing is it can analyze what is a shoe company structured, you know, hi, I'm excited to help you. Before we dive in, I work with several specialized bots. Great for strategic competitive analysis. Perfect for marketing campaign optimization. So I programmed this to walk through. Haven't I noticed you haven't shared your bio. Once you share those, I can better tailor for assistance. Okay. So basically, I am the CEO of, let's find the CEO of Nike. Let's do this. LinkedIn.com CEO Nike. Elliot Hill. All right. I'm already in. All right. So Elliot, whoa. Check my LinkedIn. Yes, to confirm my sign-in attempt. Really? I don't think I got it. Mm, yes, it's me. Okay, there we go. Huh. All right. So let's just take this right here. Oh, let's just take that. So we go back. And again, all right. So here is me. Um, please help me understand how Gen AI impacts each department in my company. Nike. All right. So again, this is an older version of ChatGPT with an older app that I built, and I'll show you the difference between it and my newer bot in ChatGPT, and then what happens when you use Grok. All right. Some questions. So it's asking me, what are the initiatives? How are you using the tech and customer experience? What's your biggest challenge competing? And then I say, here I am. All right, blah 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 blah. Da, 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 da. Okay. All right, let's see what it said. Okay. Hey, I'm impressed with your deep Nike heritage and your return as CEO. It crosses 19 different roles, blah 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 blah. Let me break down the departmental impact and then I'll suggest some specialized bots that can help. All right, so it goes through these different departments and then it refers back to the bots. So this is over a year old. I haven't really touched development in a year and it still works incredibly, and it does this for pennies. When I meet with CEOs, I usually invite my bot into the conversation to have a discussion with them. So if I go over to ChatGPT, one of the bots that I've got here is this one, which is my book. So give me the main things a CEO in the shoe industry, in the shoe industry should keep in mind about generative AI, and what are the top 5 questions they should ask each of their executive team members. List the team and put one question next to each one, to each bullet. Yeah. So those then ask, then state the top 5 questions. Let's make it clear. The CCO should ask each of their executive team members, list the team titles, and put one question next to each. Yeah, I think this is good enough. Now, this is just off the top of my head. It's 2 to 3 sentences, 3 sentences. But what I'm not doing, because this bot that I built, it already knows a certain amount of expertise. But the biggest benefit, the biggest bang for your buck in prompts is telling it what you want it to be an expert at. And then I'm going to ask this with Grok. Now, I've tested my bot here so many times. It gives me great answers, even with, I would consider that a short prompt, right? Personalization and its scale. You know, sometimes I really question this stuff. But generally speaking, the more detail I give it, these are obvious questions. All right. Now, let me see. Can I change this to, no, I can't. Um, yeah. So these are things that would make sense for a CEO to say. But what about this? For each of those roles, please act like an expert executive life coach and psychologist. What would a CEO want to know about the thoughts going on in their head when these questions are asked? All right. Now, you can't do that on Google, right? This is not a search engine. Don't confuse it with a search engine. It's not even close. All right. So let's see how it comes back. Right angle. Fear it making their creative role less relevant. Yep. Concerns about their team's ability. Pressure for quick wins, right? So you may know that as a CEO, but the fact that it can just go through this and you can drill down at this pace is insane. All right. So let's just talk about the front office. For the front office and CIO, CTO, what are the most important concepts that Adam Bloom discusses? How will the teams need to change? So now it's interpreting, it's giving you answers based off a nano language model, my own book and information that I've trained it on, basically. All right. So for the front office, right? Content automation, personalization at scale, AI driven lead scoring, it gives you the pages, customer journey orchestration, all right? How teams need to change, shift from manual, embrace real time. So, as somebody who's got a ton of expertise in this area, this is spot on. And anyone can get access to this and get answers for pennies on the dollar. So, knowledge becomes commoditized. You can assume if somebody knows how to ask the right questions and challenge things and think, all right, that's the next generation of leadership, right? Cognitive bias, understanding decision making, things of this nature are what's going to make this work better. Because if you ask the wrong questions or you trust poor answers, your decision making is not going to go well, right? So let me flip back to this for just a second. Oop. There we go. So we were talking about decision making before we went down a whole track, but if you had a decision here that had a 10x impact, right? When you're doing it over here in the AI world, it's going to have a 100x impact, right? So CEOs and executive teams, your decisions, you are putting your company at risk. And you need to get super educated and get folks around you and have multiple perspectives and make sure you don't make giant mistakes here. If you underinvest in something old, if you have something old and something new, and your decision is I'm going to move 10% of the money to the new thing as opposed to 90%, that is going to have a 10x to 100x impact on the future of your business. That's just, it's physics. It's not Adam's opinion. It's just, that's what's happening. All right. So we've been going a good bit of time. I don't want to go too much longer. I want to see how this show comes out. But if I go over here to Grok, and we could do the same thing for AI, Google AI Studio. All right, so I'm gonna have to clarify this for a minute. All right. Okay. I'm gonna take this out and let's go over to Grok. So Grok. I want you to be an expert on generative AI as described by AdamBloom.me. His YouTube about generative AI and his blog and his website, LinkedIn profile, etc. Avoid confusing him with the comedian because there's a comedian friend of mine named Adam Bloom. That's a long story. Anyway, and then I'm going to just say, make sure you reference, and let's get my YouTube going here. Let me just, Grok is a little different. And I'm testing to see how well it does as part of this, but make sure you reference. Okay, so before I kind of trained it with my own materials, and now I'm just gonna have it search the internet. So let me get this question back. All right, so I'm not even gonna do a deep search or a think. I'm just gonna say here are the things I want you to answer. Oop, stop. That's not what I meant. Yep, boom. All right. All right, well, let's see how it does. Okay. So the thing about Grok, it usually shows you the thinking. I changed some, but I only referenced me, right? I didn't load anything up, and it's doing a doggone good job. Skill shift, collaboration, mindset. Yeah, look at that. So it definitely did a nice job, and that was without me feeding it. In the chat GPT, I fed it my book, and I fed it showed transcripts, and I fed it information so it would have more intelligence. Now I know chat GPT's recently upgraded, but this is doing the same job with just a reference. So another thing I could do is say, what advice would these 3 CEOs say to the head of Nike about generative AI? keep it to the most important point to act on and be very direct, clear, and don't hold back because this information is so important. Okay. So one, Satya, Microsoft. Let's make Elon number one. Two. And then Jamie Denon. Chase. Elon Musk. All right, let's see how it does. Hey, this is personalization, right? So a lot of times these, oh, it's great at personalization. It's great at personalization, where people are like, well, where does personalization fit? Really, it's anytime you write something for someone, anytime you communicate to them. All right, so now you're getting these different views, right? And I could have, the thing is, I could have said, okay, take notes, generate a list of the top 25 CEOs of all time and have them each make a 5-word statement to the CEO of Nike. Right? You can use this for market research, and anywhere there's content, you can use this to explore ideal customer profiles. You can do competitive analysis. You can find out market trending. What we've got in our hands is giving every employee in your company, once they learn how to use it, the greatest possible tools that have ever existed to find knowledge and information. All right. You know, Musk talks about product design and customer experience, right? And he's done exceptionally well at that. Microsoft's, selling to other companies primarily, right? And he's transforming industries. Sai is saying productivity. Jamie Denon is saying cut costs, outsmart fraud, watch your margins and reputation. Pragmatic. Yep. I was involved early on when JP Morgan, I think I did a case study on what they were doing over a decade ago when I was working with Pivotal. Yep, they handled 10 trillion daily. That was one of my favorite products that we had. All right, so generate a list of the top 15 CEOs and have them each make 5-word. Okay, so let's see what this does. All right, based on all of these, please write a 25-word, a 50-word speech. Summary for me, the CEO of Nike, to use for explaining the change we must go through with employees. Okay. Okay, so let's go back. So Steve Jobs, innovate relentlessly or fade away. Mass produce winning ideas fast. Dream big, then execute flawlessly, cut costs. So one of the things that we don't know, and I didn't ask it to check, is if they ever said it. Yeah, I didn't tell them to quote exactly. So these are things that they would have said. Now, what it's doing is mathematically predicting what that persona would say. That's personalization again, right? So they get all that. Now you've got 20 ideas as a CEO, 25 ideas about how you think about this compared to other CEOs. You could ask for advice from all of them. All right. What did Rockefeller say? Sony. Let's keep going. All right. Here's a 50-word summary. Fellow Nike innovators, we're embracing generative AI to revolutionize design, personalize experiences, and outpace rivals. It's not optional. And this is a point Elon makes. There's something that's optional and there's something that's essential. And in this case, this is not optional. It's essential. It's essential. All right. And he's saying you're, as an employee, going to be a participant in amplifying your talents. Right. So this just gives you an idea of what you can do as a CEO with ChatGPT. What did I put in here? Oh, that was Elliot Hill. Okay, let's get rid of this. All right. So I think we're wrapping up. I've been going about hour and 20 minutes. I want to start to shut this down. But before we do that, I want to get back to the leadership stuff. Here we go. Right. So showed you a good bit about generative AI. And we talked about some of the leadership stuff, how to use prompts. Again, there's tons and tons of details online about specific prompts, but I'm going to teach you how to think about prompts. And particularly as an executive, because there's just so many things to do. You have an endless number of experts at your beck and call if you know how to interact with them. And the thing can also teach you to interact with them. But what I want to kind of end on is when we look at that generative AI stuff, wrong thing, Gen AI, and we talked about leadership, right? And we talked about this horrible time that we're gonna face. It is not going to be easy because humanity is going to suffer a minute. And anyone that tells you that, you can see it inside the US government now. As soon as you're saying we're going to get rid of a lot of people, guess what? People have a really hard time with that. So as a leader, we talked about as kind of an executive, like doing the work with Gen AI, but then we talked about, leading teams. And this is where humanity, I'm making a case for humanity. And in all of my psychology work, neuropsychology work, if you look at the human brain, let's see if I can draw. There's a chin. Oh, that's not a chin. Boop boop. There's a chin. Okay. So if that's a neck and that's a chin and this is a mouth, that's a nostril. This is an eye, and we got hair. You like that? Pretty nice, huh? Guy's got a mohawk. Get him down a little bit more. Here we go. Or gal. I don't know. So the number one principle in this operating system here, the brain, this operating system, the number one principle is survival. Period. You've heard about the amygdala or meditation, or you've heard about fight, flight, freeze. The way the brain works, whether you put your finger on a hot stove and pull it off, you don't even have to be a year old. If you touch something hot, you're moving it. If you're an adult and you get into an argument with somebody and you get triggered and your blood pressure goes up, that's a survival mechanism. So if people are in this environment, a trigger is not just a one-time thing. A trigger has to do with the entire context of where people are. But right here, if you come across as a leader who doesn't give a shit about what happens to their employees in this era of moving through generative AI, people are going to view you as a loser. They really are, because it's already a meat grinder out there. It's a total meat grinder. Losing your job is one of the highest stress things you can go through. And there's going to be a lot of people that lose it. So as leaders, um, we need to be good humans to the others. And there's examples of whole contact centers already been letting go and things like that. It is here. And when people have their survival neurons, you know, on edge, under that much pressure, people do some crazy things. And this is one of the reasons I am also, besides doing consulting work in this area, I am starting to announce a charity that I'm building. And I've had crises in my life in 2010 where I had to deal with this, and it's horrible. It's horrible. And so I'm starting a nonprofit that focuses on stress, depression, and suicide. But I'm going to do it in a completely different way than it's been done in the past. And so if you're a leader, look, here's what we can't let happen. We can't let it get terribly bad. We've got to figure out a way to deal with this transition so that people aren't just mentally crushed. And, um, this up here, it doesn't account for adults, for adult children. And if you look at, you know, this is the problem I'm going to go solve. But if you look at all these depressive triggers in the United States, this is just the top 20. You know, you're going to have financial difficulties, 100 million, unemployment, 8 million. Like, there's going to be a lot, workplace stress, 90 million. I mean, there's just going to be a lot of people that are way more stressed out. And so, if you're a leader and you're a good human, um, then you got to think this part of it through and try to help people through it. If you just make it where people don't matter, anyone's going to look back at you and compare you to the ones that did care and say the ones who didn't care, they were losers. So you get to decide what kind of leader you want to be and what kind of human you want to be. And that is an important message for this show. So with that said, I'm curious how I did. Love the feedback. There's some things I can already think that I need to improve, but it's been almost an hour and 30 minutes. Again, I'm not sure how long I'm going to make this show, but um, yeah, we need to really focus in as parents and as colleagues to deal with the kind of change that we're about to face. So, with that said, I'm going to close out the show here and pop on some music, and I'll probably cruise around the PowerPoint. But subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff. Give me a shout. I'm open for consulting work. Happy to do training or hands-on stuff. Can work at executive levels for pretty much any size company till you get to like the global, you know, biggies. But $20 billion company I've worked at. But I prefer a bit smaller, like 100 million to a billion. I think those are a better fit for me. Anyway, happy to help you any way I can. Just reach out. I'm looking to have people on the show as well for interviews. And again, you can, please subscribe, download, view the old stuff, and let me know what you want to talk about. I wish everybody the best. Thank you. I'm very grateful for you to watch this show. And I think that's all she wrote. All right. Bye. I'm out.